Goldberg doing on our TVs right now? What is Goldberg doing on our TVs?
I'm gonna go with the underdog.
Oh!
I know, surprise.
Oh my
Okay,
God.
okay, I understand. Yeah.
So
No, I get you. I get you.
The only reason I'm saying this is because Gaethje's got better crisp boxing than Khabib.
Welcome everybody to the Ring Generals podcast. My name is Nick Nina, and alongside me are three of my favorite guys in the world. Easy-E Eric Santos.
What's cooking, guys?
Of course, my man Jesse.
What's it going? How's it going, jabronis?
And last but not least, the RKJ Man.
Let's talk that talk, y'all. Hypocritical Nick. What's good, my brother?
Hey, what's up, everybody? Make sure you like, subscribe, and also, please, salute to the Ring Generals.
And make sure to pet Nick's cat right there. And as always, raise a glass in the sky and salute the Ring Generals.
What's good is we're toying with backgrounds today. We're being a little ridiculous. You can tell this podcast isn't going to be too serious, at least until the Khabib Gaethje talk, when I think there's going to be a lot of predicting and a lot of arguing. But this is going to be a fun podcast for you guys today. We're just going to be going over wrestling, AEW, WWE. We're going to be looking at Brian Ortega versus the Korean Zombie. We're also going to be looking at the entire UFC 253 card headlined by Khabib and Justin Gaethje, one of the best fights of the year. How are we doing, guys? We haven't podcasted in a while, but I feel like this is going to be a good one.
It's been a fat while, man. It's been a fat while.
Yeah, without a doubt, man. A lot of stuff in the MMA world been going on. So I think we were like kind of saving it for obviously for the month of October because we know there's a big one coming in. So I guess we had to save it, and build it until we would come back. But yeah, I'm excited for it. In the world of MMA, though. Pro wrestling wise, I don't know. I mean, we have different opinions about it.
Absolutely. RKJ, speaking of difference of opinions, you're kind of the wrestling guy on this podcast. You keep up with it as much as possible. So I'll just let you guys, what do you want to talk about right now? How do you want to start this podcast with a bang? How do you want to get this going?
I want to talk about the Lakers, to be honest with you. I don't want to talk about wrestling. Okay, I've been drinking since Sunday. I've been partying since Sunday. Okay, but I guess we could talk about the draft and how much of a shit show that was once again.
There was a draft?
Here, SmackDown.
There was a draft?
There was a draft, Ryan?
Yeah, there was a draft. And you didn't miss much because it was the same people moving back and forth between the shows again. And let's just be honest here. It's not like the WWE is going to stay true to that anyway. As soon as the ratings go down, they're going to panic and they're going to have some superstar shakeup, whatever, switcheroo brand thing. I don't know what's going to happen, but it's coming sooner rather than later.
All I care about is what show Lars Sullivan's on. That's the only thing I care about, since that guy apparently is absolutely invincible, and I mean pun intended.
Hey man, I think Lord Sullivan just cares about which fitness instructor he can find. Allegedly, I guess according to what we've been reading, allegedly.
I don't even think it's alleged. I think there's DMs out there. You got to do more research, RKJ. There is clear evidence he committed that crime.
Hey man, I've sent some DMs before, but it's never been as sketchy as that. It's just all been funny DMs and just dumb DMs that just made people laugh. It's never been anything that's that stupid before.
Eric, now, so we were just joking around how we didn't know there was a draft. I will be honest. I did not know there was a draft until Thursday, the day before SmackDown. Like, I did not know. I think it was last week, right? It was last Friday, the draft was. I didn't know there was a draft. I don't know if it's because the ratings are so low with WWE that they just don't promote stuff on social media as much. Or Eric, like, what are your thoughts? Like, what's going on, man? Like, we'd be so excited about a draft, but like me and you are sitting here like we care less.
The thing is that the draft, I didn't know about it until the next day. They said, wait, there's a draft? And then, I said, well, I care. So, all right, let me just look at the list. of people that made the jump to Raw and SmackDown who got called up from NXT. I look at the list and I say to myself, man, there isn't really much of a change. It looks like like one of like Apollo Crews was moved to SmackDown or Raw. I think he was from Raw to SmackDown, and I think probably the only significant change really was just Seth Rollins just leaving Monday Night Raw, because now he's not the Monday Night Messiah, I guess.
Yeah.
Now he's the Friday Night Messiah, or however he wants to call himself. So I think that's probably the only one that's, I guess, the big change, the big shakeup. But other than that, nothing really. And I mean, we're going to resort back to it. Like Ryan said, we're going to go back and we're going to have more wrestlers appear on the other brand, and then we're going to have other feuds again. We're going to go back with the same old cycle. So the brand extension it's dead. It's been dead for years.
Yeah.
It was dead long. I mean, the first draft was great. Second draft was pretty good. By the time we got to the third or fourth draft, and then the fifth one and the sixth one, that's when I couldn't take the draft seriously anymore. And there isn't much of a draft extension anymore. So, I mean, it's insulting the intelligence of fans like us. So it doesn't really matter who goes on which brand. It doesn't really matter. NXT, I don't think there was much of a draft picks from those guys, right? Or was there any call-ups from NXT?
I do know that Andrade, I believe, is going down to NXT, which is probably the biggest news. I'll be honest, that's the biggest news out of the draft for me.
It's better for him.
Andrade's going down.
It's better for him. I think for me, for Andrade, it's better off for him to go back to NXT. It was a good move for Finn Balor when he went back to NXT. I mean, he said it himself, Finn Balor, in the interview when he went back to NXT, he said that when you're on Raw and SmackDown, it's like pop music. It's like you get lost in the shuffle. You get lost in the Marvel. It's like in the Marvel movies where there's so many explosions going on, and you are not under the microscope. On NXT, there's no hiding. You know, now you're under the microscope. So for him, it was a good move, and he's a champion. And Andrade, hopefully he goes after the title. So I'm rooting for him, and obviously they'll do him good in NXT. So if anything, him going to NXT, I'm happy for Andrade, definitely.
Jesse, what's your thoughts on Andrade going down to NXT?
To be honest, man, I'm not surprised. I mean, he was doing fairly well in Raw. I mean, him linking up with Charlotte at one point was pretty cool. But then after Charlotte went, after Charlotte was doing her own thing, then Andrade got busted for something else. They kind of died down a little bit. But him going back to NXT seems like a pretty good move.
RKJ, now I know that you kind of followed this draft maybe a little bit more than all three of us. What's your takeaway? Like, I know that we all don't really care that much about this, but what is your takeaway? What at least was somewhat important coming out of this draft?
The fact that they once again destroyed SmackDown. If you've listened to this podcast at all in our previous earlier podcast, back when we were only doing audio, back when we were in that small little cramped studio at Saddleback, it was a situation where I would always complain because every year when SmackDown was starting to get good, they would take a whole bunch of superstars from SmackDown and move them on to Raw. And this year's the same thing. SmackDown has been the better of the two brands for the past couple of months. And they took Bray Wyatt. They took him over to Raw. They took Alexa Bliss, took her over to Raw. They took Nikki Cross, took her over to Raw. Lacey Evans, important part of the women's division. They took her over to Raw. They took Matt Riddle. They took Jeff Hardy over to Raw and several other people. They switched the tag team championships. Big E is by himself now. So it just I don't understand why every year. So I'm reading a report today and they're saying how they want to beef up, and they were trying to beef up SmackDown because they believe that Fox doesn't need SmackDown. And they are correct because they have something called the NFL. Okay. Yeah. But the fact of the matter is that they still destroyed SmackDown without even knowing it. You put Seth Rollins on SmackDown when he's getting ready to leave in a few months to go take care of his newborn baby. God knows how long he's going to be. Is he going to make it in time for WrestleMania? We don't know. You put the Mysterio family on there. I mean, I don't know what else they're doing. They put Apollo Crews on there. This guy has never been relevant on the main roster. He's never been. If there's anybody who needed to join the Hurt Business and turn heel, it was Apollo Crews. And they kept him as a baby face and shipped him off to SmackDown, and Ricochet is by himself. And by the way, that's a guy who needs a change of direction too. He needs to go to SmackDown too. So it seems like the moves that were supposed to be made, that should have been made, were never made, and we're just going to do this for a couple of months until WrestleMania season starts going around, the rating starts going down, and Vince says, all right, whatever, we're just going to switch everything back up again, and everybody can just appear on everything. And to be honest with you, it doesn't really feel like a brand split because everybody's in the Thunderdome. So why?
That's so stupid. It just insults our intelligence left and right. I'm not going to get mad on this podcast. What I want to talk about now, because the draft is cool, but there's bigger news in WWE that makes me want to tune into Fox so bad on Friday night. It's the fact that our boy Goldberg is back on Fox this Friday, today, I guess, tonight or next week. Does anyone give a fuck about Goldberg? I'm just gonna come out here like what is Goldberg doing on our TVs right now? What is Goldberg doing on our TVs? Eric, please explain that to me.
Why do I feel like there's another Crown Jewel pay-per-view coming up?
Oh, shit.
I mean, when it comes down to big names, it looks like we're going to be having a Crown Jewel pay-per-view or another house show in Australia.
Those are the best pay-per-views. So
if we're bringing back some of the established guys, obviously they're going to be prepping up for another big pay-per-view. I mean, Survivor Series isn't until next month? So
next month.
It could be that too. Maybe a prep for Survivor Series. It also kind of makes me wonder. I mean, I thought Goldberg was already done with wrestling. I thought his last match was with quote unquote, the last match between him and Brock Lesnar, and then he came back against Taker, and we're not going to get into that because we already talked about that. And he had his match against Bray Wyatt, and then I don't know what's the next one. I mean, is he trying to have like that match that he was going to have with Roman Reigns at WrestleMania? I guess is in the favor, since we despise now Roman Reigns. Now we got to cheer for Goldberg. So I guess that's the next big feud. We got to go behind Goldberg to go, just to have him decimate Roman Reigns because he's the heel.
I swear if they do that to Roman Reigns, it's amazing how much WWE probably wants ratings, and they make it so when I have nothing to do on most Friday nights, I still am not tuning into SmackDown because there's nothing. Now, I've actually tuned into a lot of the Roman Reigns stuff because it's been pretty good. I like the whole feud with Jey Uso. That's not bad stuff. The whole rest of the show can kiss my ass. But like, I'm just saying, like, why do we need Goldberg on TV? We don't need Goldberg. Now, Jesse, I want to turn this to you because I know RKJ is going to explode in a second, especially after I say this next name. But so there's been rumors that WWE is going to sign or has been in talks with one of the top female wrestlers out there, free agents. No, it's not Tessa Blanchard. It's not anybody else. It's our girl Eva Marie. I guess she's coming back now.
I mean, it's been speculated for at least this past month that she was getting ring ready. She was like practicing. She's been working out at her own home. I mean, it's not a shocker, but at the same time, it's kind of like, and she would leave for something else, and then she just comes back, and then boom, she wants to be in action again. I mean, it's a pretty good move for her, I guess. But to be honest, I haven't tuned into her stuff like in the past, so I really couldn't care less.
The last time we ran into her was at WrestleCon, and Nick ran into her. So there's that. I guess I don't know what she's been up to.
Go ahead.
I mean, I've seen her partying at a club before, like a couple years back.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Well, she is actually local. Like, she lives about 5-10 minutes away from here. She lives in she lives very, very close to Albany. She's in
she may have
County.
moved. I don't know. She may have moved, but I don't know. I mean, I don't keep
She actually tried to purchase a home from my mother, who's a real estate agent. She actually tried to purchase a home at one point. So she's local. But now RKJ, considering that she's local and considering that Goldberg is legendary and had the streak, how excited are you that they're coming back to WWE? That this is Vince's exciting. I think I might have cut this next segment out because RKJ is going to get so mad right now. So let's just preface it. Here we go. This is what we're going to bring it back. This is going to be Ryan Rant's Goldberg Eva Marie edition.
Look, I'm more excited about the poop that comes out of my body in the morning than seeing Eva Marie and Goldberg and Brock Lesnar on television. I don't know why in 2020 we're getting this. First of all, Eva Marie, okay? And I got to be careful what I say about women's wrestlers because I said something about Lacey Evans about a year or so ago, and Twitter blew me up for it. But I'm going to say it right now, okay? And I don't care if she sees it. I'm sorry, she cannot wrestle. Okay, if you're bringing her back for a spokesman appearance or something like that, yes, that's okay. But if you're bringing her back for in-ring stuff, which it sounds like they are doing, I mean, they are just naive and it's just stupid. As far as Goldberg and Brock Lesnar, I don't understand how you're going to build new stars in 2020, a time where we're in a pandemic where people are willing to try new things. And yet you think that the answer is bringing back Goldberg and Brock Lesnar. That's the answer. Now, I don't understand it. And what's happening is these guys aren't even putting the next generation over. We saw it in Saudi Arabia before COVID hit. Okay, I think that might have started COVID with how bad it was.
It probably did.
COVID started because the Fiend got beat by Goldberg, and then what's weird to me is the Fiend just popped back up. Like, why couldn't you kick out of that move? And then we have Brock Lesnar, a guy who's literally gotten tens of millions of dollars from the WWE. People are getting fired all over the place, and yet some way, somehow, he's getting all these great deals, and yet they could bring him back. It just doesn't make any sense. Now, the only part-timer who I'm a fan of bringing back, and we all know who I'm going to say, is The Rock. And you know why? Because he's going to be utilized to put Roman Reigns over. But if I'm The Rock, and I'm saying, you know what, I might be interested in doing something for Roman Reigns next year, I don't know about it because I'm seeing what the WWE is doing and all the type of mess that they're doing. I wouldn't be surprised if Vince comes over and says, why don't you go over this one and then next year you give it back to Roman? Like, that's not the way this goes. This is not the way it works. It's just ridiculous. It's terrible booking by the WWE during a time when people are willing to watch and should be willing to take chances, and they're not willing to take those chances. It's just unacceptable.
It is so frustrating how how much they don't want me to watch the product. It is so frustrating. It's amazing. I mean, literally, I watch like 90 Day Fiance and like Below Deck Mediterranean before I watch SmackDown. Legitimately, I'm not even making that up. If you're a fan of those shows, shout out. But like, still, like I watch Barstool Sports' like backstage show on YouTube before I watch. Like, it's ridiculous.
What have you been reduced to, Nick?
What's up? What
have you been reduced to now, man?
I'm watching Girlfriends on Netflix over WWE right now.
I'm watching a lot of MMA. It's made me watch a lot more MMA, and I have a lot more appreciation for MMA for sure. And I'm excited about that Lomachenko fight this Saturday. But yeah, WWE's tough. All right, let's move to AEW because they had a big show, kind of almost like a TV pay-per-view. Their technical anniversary show. It didn't come in the same week that they had their anniversary show last year in 2019, but still, it's around the same time. It's the same month. You know, they put every single title on the line. Moxley retained once again. Cody retained over Orange Cassidy. Hikaru Shida retained. The Revival, not the Revival, excuse me, FTR, they retained too. So my question is for AEW, where are they going next? Like they took the title off of Cody a little bit, and then they gave right back to him. They haven't took the title off of Moxley. I think they're teasing a little bit of Young Bucks FTR match, but like where are we going here with WWE? Who wants to take the reins on this? Because I'm a little confused that they're booking as well right now. Eric, you want to just like try to figure this out for me, and maybe what do you think they should do next?
I mean, as far as Moxley goes, it looks like he's in good hands up against Eddie Kingston because there seems to be a bit of a history between Kingston and Moxley. Um, with that being said, I think there is going to be more of a tension, more of a heated rivalry between those two. So the last time when I saw Moxley and Kingston go at it before, I had a feeling that they were not going to finish it off. I knew Eddie was not going to be finishing off a feud just like that, the match. As far as the tag team titles go, the tag team titles, Young Bucks, FTR, it will happen. Obviously, they just keep teasing because it's such a dream match, and they're just so. I think they're careful in the fact that they want to not want to like destroy the dream match because there's been so many dream matches that have happened and they've been squandered away or they've been like totally like a mess and they didn't live up to expectations. So I think with this one, FTR and Young Bucks, they just want to keep teasing it for either Full Gear or a big show for next year or this year. So with that being said, they're going to leave that, maybe reserved for a different date. Women's title, Hikaru Shida. I have yet to find that opponent for her. Who I actually thought that Thunder Rosa was going to take the title from her, but I feel like maybe Thunder Rosa is going to come back with her to go up against Hikaru Shida. It would have been nice to have the NWA Women's Championship again on the line because that way the NWA isn't gone because when this pandemic hit, NWA Power went off the air, and so that was a big shame. And so I don't want the NWA to go away necessarily, or I don't want to see like the NWA titles go away either. So I would like to see like the titles be important again. I would like to see that. There is one criticism that I remember. We've had him on the show. His name is Shepherd Basketball, Nathan Shepherd. Shouts to you, buddy.
Yeah.
He was the one who pointed out that, I've been watching AEW Dynamite for a while. Why does Moxley always get beat up at the end every single Wednesday night? Like, have you guys been noticing that? Almost every Wednesday night, he always gets beat up. He wins a match and he gets beat up.
It's interesting, but it's interesting thing to bring up because at least if I am a wrestling fan, that's probably leading to the fact that that's the way you're beating him down, that cheap way of beating him down, that once you have the big match, he ends up losing because of the repeated beatdowns and his body not being there, and it's cheating, right? So RKJ, I know you're really into like the intricacies of wrestling and the storylines. What do you think about something like that? Like, again, I was surprised that Lance Archer didn't win this title, considering that they have that New Japan thing that they can also do with the U.S. title over there. So, like, I was surprised that maybe they didn't have Lance Archer win on Dynamite, and then they maybe figured out something with New Japan to do, like, the North American title and put both titles on the line and have Moxley. You know what I'm saying? Like, title versus title. I don't know.
I don't think the relationship between AEW and New Japan Pro Wrestling is so great to the point that they can be featuring AEW titles on New Japan Pro Wrestling. This isn't a situation like they have, I think, in Mexico. What's the promotion, Eric? AAA? Yeah.
AAA and CAMLL.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, Kenny Omega won a championship in one of those promotions and still is the champion. He has not defended it. So I just don't think they have that relationship. But the issue that I'm having with AEW is they're becoming sort of like the WWE. I'm just not enjoying the wrestling. I'm not enjoying some of the storylines, and some of these things just don't make sense. Like, for instance, I believe I saw Tony Schiavone in a weird segment with Britt Baker, something off a playoff from the 40-year-old virgin. Like, this is something Vince McMahon would think about, in the morning and just go crazy over, and you don't expect it. And then the women's division. It seems like every time somebody brings up a fair criticism about the women's division, they roll their eyes. And I'm seeing that same attitude that the WWE has. Oh, well, we don't like this. We want this to change. And they roll their eyes until the ratings start shrugging. Then they actually start to make change. It's the same thing kind of sort of happening with AEW. Now, the ratings, honestly, with AEW, they've stayed the same, going down a little bit, going up a little bit. If you want a major push in ratings, you've got to sign a big superstar, like I said, and you've got to be more consistent with your storylines. Your whole show needs to be something that I'm engaged in. Right now, it's too easy for me when the women come on for me to just switch the channel. It's too easy for me to do that. No, I want it to be a situation where the whole entire show, you're saying to me pretty much, you're not going to change the show, not even during a commercial, because you want to see what happens. And I just have not been seeing that from AEW compared to the beginning. Now, a lot of people can say, well, Ryan, it's the pandemic, right? It's the global pandemic and the situation that we're in. Well, cut the bullshit. Everybody's in the same situation, okay? Sports leagues, NFL, Major League Baseball, the NBA just got finished with their championship. Everybody, NHL, everybody's dealing with this global pandemic with limited fans or no fans. It's now about what you can do. How can your writing and your storytelling get your talent over? And I just don't feel like AEW has been doing that. And I feel like they've been taking too many cues from the WWE. I don't agree with it, Eric. Why is Jon Moxley constantly getting beat up? It just doesn't make any sense because he's a babyface. No, he's supposed to be a badass babyface on the verge of being kind of a heel, kind of like a Stone Cold Steve Austin. And how many times did Stone Cold Steve Austin get his ass whooped? Not too many times.
Very good point.
Not too many times.
Yeah.
So
it was.
if you're Stone Cold Steve Austin getting his ass whipped all the time, he's supposed to be the face of your company. It just doesn't make any sense. So AEW's got to improve, and I'm not going to take the bullshit of the pandemic excuse. I'm hearing it from everybody, from businesses all around this country and all around this world, to sports leagues, to wrestling organizations. I'm not going to take it. You made the decision to go across the pond, or to go to Japan and get Josie women. And when the country had to shut down, those women had to go back across the country instead of those who were officially part of the United States, like Hikaru Shida. You could have pivoted. You could have did some certain things to make everything better with your women's division, like what they could have done with Thunder Rosa. But yet I'm hearing because of heat between Thunder Rosa and Eva Lise, they didn't sign Thunder Rosa, I guess. Eva Lise got signed over Thunder Rosa. It doesn't make any sense what they're doing. It makes no sense. And it's frustrating to me as a person who was a year ago around this time, I was so ready for AEW. I was so excited, but I'm starting to get scared that AEW is falling into a pattern. So they need to fix it sooner rather than later, or else they're never going to get out of the ratings kind of hole that they're in. They're always underneath 1 million unless they're not competing with NXT.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, because this year would have been a fantastic year for wrestling overall, because you saw it's almost like the resurgence of wrestling back again. You see AEW, you see WWE, whether we want to criticize them or not. Impact Wrestling looks like it's starting to get pretty good as of right now with the signings. NWA would have been a great year for those guys too. AAA as well. It's just the list goes on and on. Bar Wrestling could have been better, but obviously we know what happened. But with that being said, it's just in a way like you said, man. I mean, who knows if AEW will probably not rely on taking too many cues from WWE, or like rely on them, or just like in a way just bash on them as well, because also the bashing on them too, it's like you're kind of like hanging on to something that, I mean, it's starting to get a little cringy. Sometimes they would get cringy, and like you said, Tony Schiavone and Britt Baker, that one was, hate to say it, but that was cringy. And yeah, I just hope to see them improve one of these days.
I'm gonna say, Eric, that's some WWE shit.
Yeah. Want me to give you some more WWE shit that they did? That whole Jericho MJF segment was bullshit. Also, like the fact that they're like, I get it's supposed to be comedy, but Jericho, I understand, is kind of an odd, kind of psychopathic character a little bit on AEW, where he's kind of nuts a little bit. If you just kind of really look at his character, he's kind of this guy that's nuts. He walks around with a bat. He kind of says idiotic things. You know, he challenges people he probably shouldn't. And then you have MJF, who's the best talker in the game, having to play along with that jokey style. They also copied what they had done earlier last year in 2019 when they had a great segment on TV where they were talking about Cody Rhodes. And it was one of like BR Live's like most viewed video on their YouTube site because of how good they riff-raffed. But it's like they kind of joked about it and did it again, and then they just asked to like go out to have a steak dinner. I thought that was kind of childish too. And it's just I want AEW. They say it's supposed to be a sports league, right? So that's not sports league. You don't see that shit in the NFL. You don't see that stuff in the NBA. You know what I'm saying? Like that's not sports. That's joking around. The same as Matt and all that stuff. Like you got to find the right mix. It is pro wrestling. It's not real, right? You can have someone like Abaddon, who I want to ask Jesse about in a second. You can have other people that they're kind of weird, but it shouldn't be like the segments are weird. It should be just specific people are strange.
I was gonna. Well, sorry if I cut you guys off, but
go ahead.
Yeah, another point that I also want to make is that me and Luke follow WASD Network. Check it out. We were talking about how to build heels in pro wrestling. It seems to me that AEW doesn't really know how to build heels. The only good heel right now is MJF, but anybody else out there that you guys know who's a heel? Lance Archer, but anybody else? I guess.
Yeah, I mean Lance Archer, I guess. I mean he's definitely a heel for sure. But MJF by far. I mean the Inner Circle itself is heelish, but they're also the way they're comedic. It kind of comes off as you kind of want to cheer for them a lot too. But yeah, no, I mean the whole wrestling business has trouble right now because I think it's a little bit compared to like baseball in a way where like baseball, like you know how there's shifts now, but people still aren't bunting and they're not taking advantage of the fact that there's wide open holes on the infield. Wrestling is in this stage where they're not storytelling anymore. I forget who said this on Twitter. No, it's Chavo Guerrero Jr. said this on social media at some point, or maybe in some interview last week. He explained that the wrestlers now, they are more athletic and they are better at wrestling technically with all the moves, but they're horrible storytellers. And that's why I think RKJ, the matches are a little bit boring and the titles don't matter as much. And it's the same whole WWE's in too, because they're like, they can't storytell because they're just, everybody's an idiot that writes for them. And then they also can't storytell in the ring because the wrestlers are brought up to be these super athletes that aren't even, like half of them aren't even wrestlers, like Braun Strowman. They're just guys that they got out of the gym. So I think wrestling has a lot of problems right now that they need to fix. And in a pandemic, when the crowd can't help them out with pops and all that stuff, I think they're suffering in some. They need to get more creative. Like RKJ, you're saying there needs to be a change. I just think they need to get more creative because they need to offset the fact the crowd can't help them out anymore.
Well, how can they get creative, Nick? Well,
better storytelling in the matches. We don't need a 20-minute tag team match starting AEW. We don't need Goldberg. We don't need Eva Marie's boobs. Like we don't need any of that stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just that's old school stuff. Like that was stuff that was popular in the early 2000s. It's not popular like now. The match thing is a whole new thing, but yeah, it just needs to be better. And AEW needs to stop being like WWE because that doesn't work. Clearly, WWE's ratings have gone lower and lower and lower and lower and lower every single year. And this is without AEW, too, being a competitor. So, very, very strange. We need to move on to some MMA. Actually, no, sorry, Jesse. I want to talk to you real quick because I want to just get you into the segment. I know we're going to talk about MMA, and I'm tossed to you a lot. But someone posed the question of how do we get female wrestling in AEW better? Abaddon. That's my one answer. Do you know who that is? Do you know who Abaddon is?
I've heard of her, yes.
Okay. So, Abaddon was somebody that in the middle of the pandemic, was starching people and ruined Anna Jay's debut on Dynamite. And since then, she's been, I'm sure something happened with COVID where she had to go off TV a little bit. She's come back. She's built up what I believe is an undefeated record on AEW Dark. but she's not really there. Like she's the one that we're talking about records. Like that crazy character of someone like spitting out blood. That's the part of wrestling I like. She should go in there and just destroy Hikaru Shida. So what do you think about kind of the women's division in Abaddon and people like that?
Right now, the women's division's kind of a little dull, to be honest.
Yeah.
And Abaddon is trying to do, she kind of, what she did with the blood moments, it kind of reminds me of Tajiri when he did with the little
The green
poison, mist. It kind of reminds me of that. And so I think that's a pretty good idea. That's a pretty that's a good part. Now the rest of the part, it needs to catch up.
Yeah.
Because if Abaddon's going to continue dominating people left and right, it's not going to be pretty much entertaining at all.
Well, I think you could do. I agree with you on that. I think you could build up to an Abaddon Nyla Rose confrontation where you have an unbeatable monster versus somebody that literally has never been beaten and is just a crazy zombie character. That's the type of women's match I want to see in AEW. I don't want to see some random Japanese girl versus a random white girl where both of them can't wrestle. And it's not has nothing to do with their race. I'm just saying, like, they're just Britt Baker. I get it. She's cool. She's one of the more attractive girls on the roster. She's got the dentist. She's got personality. Shida doesn't really have personality, and she's the champion only because Kenny Omega likes Japanese girls most likely. And it's just like
okay, there, Jim Cornette.
What's up?
Okay, there, Jim Cornette.
Hey, you guys all know that's true. Everybody listening right now knows that's true too.
Hey man, we coming over to the bathtub later tonight. We coming over to hang out in the bathtub later tonight.
It's a hot spring, man. But anyways, back to your point.
It's a hot spring. That's hilarious.
Back to your point, Nick. Abaddon, between now and Abaddon, it's
what that is. I don't have no hot spring.
How long is that gonna last? It's not gonna last long.
No, but you could build up to that. Like you could build up to Young Bucks and FTR, and you could build up to Moxley versus I don't know, Cody, someone like it. Just I think the women's division is going with like they're not storytelling as much, and again like Big Swole technically has this big push, and then she just gets beaten like less than 10 minutes on Dynamite. Like it's like what the hell is going on? Like a championship match is supposed to be a championship match. You don't need to put all the championships on one night if you're just going to squash somebody because you run out of time or make the show longer. You know what I'm saying? Like it's weird. But we need to move on to MMA. Go ahead, RKD. Last point, though. Last point.
You know what's going to make wrestling go crazy and go on the side of its head? You know what's going to make wrestling crazy?
What?
John Cena going to AEW.
That's not going to happen.
Tranquilo. Moving on right now.
Moving on.
Moving on. Let's move on.
Can we
just cut it out right now?
Can we
he said he would never get married. He said he'd never get married. Now he's married. He's
Moving
going
on.
to AEW.
This is the part where we're gonna edit.
This is where I wish I was Tony Reali so I could mute and pause RKJ with those terrible points.
I just get another Moxar lemonade, so I wouldn't even care.
Let's move on.
Right now.
Okay, so we're gonna get into MMA now because this is kind of what we built this podcast around. Because first of all, we have a great fight this weekend, or today technically. This is coming out Saturday. Today we have a great fight between Brian Ortega and the Korean Zombie. Big rivalry. Brian Ortega slapped Korean Zombie's translator in the face for no reason. We have this weird beef. That's a great main event for an ESPN Plus. And we'll get our thoughts on this. At least I'll get Jesse and Eric's thoughts on that fight specifically. But, guys, this next legitimate UFC pay-per-view, it is stacked. It is really looking like one of those cards that we're going to remember for a long time. It's one of those cards where I get excited because I feel like I can bet on like 7 or 8 of these fights and be confident that I'm going to get most of them right because of how stacked it is. It's amazing how good that Covington Woodley card was. This is so much better than that, which is insane. So let me just get this fight card up really quickly. I didn't have it up just now. Let me get this up. So a little pause here. So while I'm looking at all this stuff up, Jesse, give me your thoughts on Ortega and Korean Zombie coming up this today.
Well, I'll give you my thoughts on this. Ortega hasn't fought in like over like a year and a half, either due to pulling out of fights due to injury or doing some other stuff. I know he's got a charity thing going on, so he does that for for the local kids to get. And then Korean Zombie, he's been kind of like on and off. I mean, I think his last fight was against Frankie Edgar, which was like last winter. It was like 6 or 7 months ago.
Yeah.
That was his last win. He was supposed to fight Ortega originally this June, but unfortunately Ortega had to pull. I think Ortega pulled out, and so he's been off for other fights. But he just wants the Ortega fight because they have bad blood. With that being said, during the fight with Yoel Romero and Stylebender, Korean Zombie went to the bathroom, and then Ortega saw an open window, saw his friend and agent, and he took it. He bitch slapped him. I mean, he didn't like what he said. I guess it was like, something been mistranslated. If not, then obviously Korean Zombie's friend said something, and then, he got bitch slapped. Korean Zombie didn't like that, so I was like, hey man, I walk away and you saw my friend. That ain't gonna happen in my watch, not anymore. And so, this fight's been brooding for quite some time. It's been like over a year basically. But if I had to go with this fight, I had to go with TKZ, the Korean Zombie.
Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I like Ortega. He's got great jiu-jitsu. He's a black belt. He's been trained by one of the best in the Gracies. I mean, so is TKZ. He's done a rare move that not many people are able to do, and that's called a twister. That's when you crank somebody on the floor and you twist the opposite when their hips are facing down. I mean, it's not a great feeling. It doesn't even look great either.
We should try that,
and
dude.
So, what's up?
We should try that move. Yeah, we should do that. Why not?
Anyway, but the only reason I gave TKZ the advantage is his boxing. He's got a better boxing than Ortega. I mean, we saw Ortega fight with Max Holloway, and Max Holloway was teaching him how to throw hooks middle of the fight. And so I hope Brian Ortega brought his A game in his boxing, because it's going to be a long night for the both of them. Yeah, that's my two piece.
Eric, who you got in this fight?
As much as I love Ortega, and he's one of my favorites in the current roster, just by seeing how Korean Zombie, what he did to Frankie Edgar the last fight, I feel like he's going to put Ortega in the same position as Frankie Edgar. I mean, I will say that Ortega will put up a good fight against him, but I think Zombie's just much more of a different fighter. He's dealing with a different animal, and he's different. He's going up against a different guy with a different style, and he's underestimating him. I really think that give props to freaking Ortega for shaving his head and with a new look. But still, I mean, with a new look and no hair, I still think that's not going to be enough to take on a guy like Zombie. The fight that should have happened, I believe it was the end of the year from last year. So having that layoff and now coming into 10 months later, it's I don't know how Ortega's going against a guy like Zombie. So I feel like what's going to happen is they're going to go to the distance, and I feel like Zombie's going to take this one. He's going to win via decision. I don't see a knockout coming in, although it'd be a surprise knockout if he were to give it to him on the third round. That's probably his best possibility for Zombie to go in for the TKO to Ortega. But my gut feeling is that they're going to go to the distance.
I'll say this. I couldn't disagree with both of you two anymore. Brian Ortega's winning this fight. Are we really comparing the two wins against Frankie Edgar compared to Brian Ortega not giving up against Max Holloway and taking horrendous punishment? I mean, again, Ortega's last loss was to Max freaking Holloway. It wasn't to Yair Rodriguez, like the Korean Zombie. Okay, I got Ortega in this, man. He's the underdog. He was somewhat embarrassed on a national stage against Max Holloway. He's had plenty of time to recover from his injury. There's bad blood. The guy comes from a tough life outside the octagon growing up. I got Brian Ortega, man. Brian Ortega, I'm going to go 4th round knockout of the Korean Zombie. It's going to be a good-ass fight. But no, I got Brian Ortega. He's got hands like meat hooks. So I got him in this fight. I didn't even know if that makes any sense what I just said, but nonetheless,
yeah,
Brian Ortega is knocking.
It's understandable. It's understandable. Yeah.
Brian Ortega is knocking the Zombie out of Korean Zombie this Saturday. Today. This is out today. All right, let's move on to something that RKJ knows about, and that is the UFC 254 main evented by Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Justin Gaethje. One of the most anticipated Khabib fights, besides obviously the Conor McGregor fight back in the day. Also on this card, a massive, really should be title fight between Robert Whittaker and Jared Cannonier if it weren't for Israel Adesanya being just such a monster star and maybe the next John Jones in that division. These guys should be really fighting for the title. You also have a big heavyweight match, Alexander Volkov versus Walt Harris. Walt Harris obviously trying to avenge a loss in his last fight, a fight where he was fighting after his daughter or his stepdaughter's gone missing. Terrible story there. And then we have a fight that we've talked about so much on this podcast. Ankalaev versus Ian Cutelaba. Now, to give you the history on this fight originally happened, I believe it was in Norfolk, Virginia, way before the coronavirus pandemic. And Cutelaba faked getting knocked out. He spun, he faked it, and the ref stopped the fight early. Cutelaba then went insane, and Dana White agreed it was a bad stoppage. They've tried to schedule this fight, I believe, 2 or 3 other times. It's the second coming of Ferguson versus Khabib. So hopefully these guys finally will get in the ring to fight. That should be a barn burner for the 4th best fight on this card. Also, the preliminary card has Steven Struve, who's 7 foot tall, and you can't teach that, versus Tai Tuivasa, who drinks beer out of a fucking shoe. This is such a great card. Originally, we also did have Rafael dos Anjos fighting on this card, and you also had Cynthia Calvillo, but due to COVID and I believe an injury with dos Anjos, they are both out. So this originally was a really, really stacked card. It's still great with the 4 main events, but it would have been a lot better before. RKJ, what do you think about a card like this? Because you're a casual fan, very casual fan. I know you're excited about Khabib, and that fight's worth buying the pay-per-view in itself. But after hearing what I just kind of explained, how more excited are you for a card like this?
I am very excited. I think I said to Jesse after watching that terrible, terrible fight between Kamaru Usman and Jorge Masvidal, I was like, I'm not buying any more UFC fights. But this one has tempted me to buy it. It's very much so tempted it. The only thing is those last people you're talking about, the people in Norfolk, Virginia, I could care less about them, okay? There are 2 relevant names who started off in a relevant place like Norfolk, Virginia. I know some people from Norfolk, Virginia. It's not a nice place to be at. It's not a great
Those
place.
are fans.
People from Norfolk, Virginia want to get out of Norfolk.
I will not be promoting in Virginia this podcast. There you go. Right there.
Much love to you guys, though.
Yeah.
You don't want to promote in Virginia. But look, I think this is a great card. And when I criticize UFC and I say, man, you guys need to put on your best stuff, especially now during a global pandemic. This is why. Because as a casual fan during a global pandemic, I'm looking at this card and I'm saying to myself, you know what? I don't know half of these names on the card, but it's so good. And the fights look so good. And of course, the main event's so good that I'm totally willing to buy it. I think I'm going to have to buy this one because of how great it is. And of course, I'll be rooting for Khabib because I want to see Conor Khabib. Of course, again.
Otra vez. Jeez.
Well, interesting news about that. I'm glad you brought that up because Khabib, this whole fight camp has been talking and vehemently denying wanting to fight Khabib. So RKJ, when you hear that, because remember, it was very personal. I rewatched that whole incident, and it still made me have like goosebumps watching those guys jump into the ring, attack Conor McGregor, watching Dylan Dennis deservedly get his ass kicked from Khabib in the first row. There was so much hate, religion, families, race brought up in that fight. I personally don't think Khabib is ever going to fight Conor unless they really set something up, like Conor has to have his hands tied behind his back so he can just beat his ass. But RKJ, when you hear Khabib continually denying that fight, even if he wins this fight, I'm at least skeptical that Conor fight's going to happen. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's definitely on. And we'll talk about it a little bit later, but I think Conor McGregor is going to make easy work of Dustin Poirier. I think this is going to be just like Cowboy Donald Cerrone. Remember, your boy Black Stradamus predicted it back in January before the global pandemic. He said it. I said Conor McGregor was the first round.
And Cowboy Cerrone, though.
That was only one fight that you predicted, Ryan, so don't get ahead of yourself.
Hey, man,
right, tranquilo.
Hold on. I want to let you know something. Okay, I found this out. Did you know that Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier fought in 2014 and Conor knocked him the hell out in 2014? Did you know?
But you didn't predict that. You didn't predict that.
A long time ago.
You didn't predict that.
Time ago. I think history's going to
predict itself. You didn't predict shit, dude, so don't give me any of that.
It's going to happen, Eric. I know we have some.
Well, that too. Yeah. Well, that too. Maybe there might be possibility,
But let's just be honest here. Conor McGregor draws. And if you want to make money in the UFC, who are you going to go to? You're going to go to Conor McGregor. Khabib is a smart guy. He's a businessman. He knows everybody and their mom wants to see this fight. I think Khabib, honestly, if he wins against Justin Gaethje, and I'm going to give my prediction a little bit later on, if he wins this fight against Justin Gaethje and Conor, and I do think he will, wins this fight in January or whenever they happen to have this fight, I think we're getting it next year. Hopefully there's some fans there. We're going to get Khabib and McGregor. And hey, Jerry, maybe that can be an AT&T Stadium.
Maybe. That may be so.
Maybe.
Yeah. I think they need to go out of the United States for that fight because I don't think the U.S. is going to allow I don't think they're going to allow it, what that will be worth. And Dana White also discussed how he doesn't really want UFC to have like the partial crowds. He'd rather just bring it back when it can be full again, somewhere at least.
Well, Dana White's going to be waiting a long time.
I agree. That's part of it. That's why I asked. So that's why I asked because it could be a very long time, and I think Khabib's going to have to defend that title more before he'd have to face Conor McGregor. All right, I will give my opinion on this card and these fights because I want to give it to the true MMA guys second to really discuss one of these legendary fights like Khabib and Gaethje. Yeah, I mean, as far as Kutulib and Khabib go, it's going to be a good fight. I don't really know who's going to win that one. Walt Harris and Volkov, differentiating styles. Good heavyweight fight to kind of keep everybody entertained on the card. Excited about that. Whitaker and Cannonier is just as hard to predict as Gaethje and Khabib is, to be honest, for me, because Whitaker, he was dealing with a lot personally in the fight against Israel Adesanya. Adesanya has proved himself to be a legend here in the mixed martial arts world. Then you have Jared Cannonier, who is just a monster of a middleweight, a guy that you could almost compare to a Francis Ngannou in the middleweight division, just a guy that starches people left and right. But Whitaker really good in his last fight too, and Whitaker before the fight with Israel Adesanya, was going toe to toe, getting kicked in the face by Yoel Romero and stuff like that. So this is a very hard fight. I am going to go with Robert Whitaker for this fight though, because I think that Whitaker's head is back in the game for this one. Cannonier has beaten some legitimate guys in this division. He has it, and he used to be a light heavyweight. He has beaten.
Used to be.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's he has beaten interestingly, excuse me. I'm actually looking at the wrong. I read this wrong. He didn't win at light heavyweight, so he went down to middleweight. He beat David Brands, whatever, performance of the night, second round knockout. He beat Anderson Silva, TKO, leg kick, whatever, 2019. The big win is against Jack Hermanson. But then, like what I'm saying is when you look at Whitaker's, let me just get over to it really quickly. When you look at what Whitaker's done, and his experience, and him being a title holder, he's beaten Derek Brunson, Jacare Souza, Yoel Romero 2 times. He lost to Israel Adesanya. Again, his head wasn't there. Goes back, 5-round war, beats Darren Till. Okay? Whitaker's winning this fight. Cannonier will have his day come, but Robert Whitaker's winning this fight. And then we get to Khabib and Justin Gaethje. You have Khabib, who's one of the best fighters ever, one of the best wrestlers, if not the best wrestler ever in MMA, maybe besides George St. Pierre. Right? There's a fight that you could look at in the future, but I'm not going to talk about that. And then you have Justin Gaethje, who has boxed his way and has struck his way to the top of the lightweight division. But he also has an incredible wrestling background. He stops wrestling better than anybody else. So you look at it and you have a clash of styles, right? Can Gaethje outbox Khabib? Can he get more points? Will Khabib be able to, really out-wrestle Gaethje and prove that Gaethje's wrestling wasn't that good? My prediction for this fight, after a ton of research, a ton of back and forth thinking, I can't go against Khabib. I can't go against Khabib. I think he wins this fight. I think it sets up for George St. Pierre later next year. George St. Pierre's return, because St. Pierre has scoffed at most other return fights except for this one. And I think Khabib doesn't want to fight Conor, so he'll fight George St. Pierre first. And so I think that's what's going to happen. Justin Gaethje should keep his head high, and I could see a rematch in his future, but I'm going to go with Khabib. Eric, what's your thoughts on this card and specifically the main event?
Card is stacked as always. So with that being said, the one that I'm looking forward to again with Whitaker and Jared. So, for me, I'm going for a guy like Whitaker because after seeing that fight that he had with Darren Till, it just goes to show he can still be a dominant force in the middleweight division. It just goes to show that he can get his belt back as well. The thing is that, obviously I was a bit heartbroken when he lost that match with him and Adesanya, but I think this is going to be his time for him to shine. The return of the Reaper, he'll be back. And as much as I love Jared, who is just a flat out, just a brute force, seeing him fight against Anderson Silva, that one was pretty scary. So I was actually afraid more for Anderson Silva's life in that one. But with that being said, I think Jared proved a point there. I see this fight going it's going to go 3 rounds, right? It's going to go 3 rounds, obviously. So this one's going to go all 3 rounds. Whitaker's winning this one. I can see it go into a TK knockout. I think I can see this fight going with a knockout from the Reaper himself. This just slowly gets him back into the game, and this will slowly get him into the rankings. I wouldn't mind seeing another bout, a trilogy, just to end off the fight between Whitaker and Yoel Romero. I wouldn't mind seeing those 3 go at it again. I mean, those 2 guys, the last spot that they had, it was a great one that me and Nick, we went to go see. That proved to be one of my favorite fights. I wouldn't be surprised if Yoel Romero wants to go at it again, just one last time, and see who really comes out on top. Who knows? With Khabib, Nurmagomedov, and Justin Gaethje. At first, I said that Justin Gaethje might have a chance after I saw that fight between him and Ferguson. Well, in a way, I think to myself that Justin Gaethje, he went through a really, really difficult test with a guy like Tony Ferguson, a guy who was really freakish in the ring, just the combinations and buffet of just knockout punches. And I actually thought to myself that Ferguson there were times where he was going to have him on the ground. But Justin Gaethje just proved me wrong. He was one of those guys that proved me wrong. I think he surprised a lot of people. I talked to one of the guys. Shout out to MMT Harvey. I talked to him about Justin Gaethje, and I think we underestimated that guy. I think we underestimated Justin Gaethje just a little bit, and I think Khabib might be underestimating him too, because, and at the same time that I actually feel bad for Khabib too, because he recently lost his father, who's been there by his side through almost every fight. And Khabib went on record. He said that, of course, it's hard to deal with the loss of his father, and he's actually tired of even talking about it, because that just adds more pressure to him, because he knows he's going to have another fight coming up, and who knows what's going to happen, because not having his father there by his side to go up against Justin Gaethje, it's also going to be a difficult one for Khabib as well, who is a very well-known wrestler. We all know him as probably one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, if not in the world. But who knows how Khabib is going to do? But after also giving it a lot of thought, just thinking about it over and over, this fight, it's going to have to go with Khabib Nurmagomedov. I think Khabib is going to beat him. It's going to be a tough test for him up against Justin Gaethje. And again, Justin Gaethje is going up against freakish-looking guys. You know, he went up against an animal like Tony Ferguson.
Yeah.
So this is going to be another tough test for him. If not, you can probably say this might be the final boss for him in order to get the lightweight championship. It's going to be a tough one. It's going to be a long night. There's going to be a lot of grappling. So brace yourself. This is going to be a true tough test for Justin Gaethje. But yeah, Khabib is going to win this one.
All right, Jesse. You've heard our opinions. What the hell happened? What the hell happens on this card, man?
First off, I'm gonna go with let's go with Jared Cannonier and Whitaker. As for Whitaker, great boxing, great footwork. Cannonier, we all know he's a power puncher. He'll knock somebody's lights out within a split second. If Whitaker moves into his positioning where Cannonier favors his power hand, it's going to be lights out for Whitaker. But Whitaker could make quick work of Cannonier if he keeps on Chris boxing, pick him apart, throw some leg kicks to the liver, thighs, calves. Same thing with Cannonier. He's got great power legs. He's got to throw those leg kicks as well. But if I had to choose between the two of them, I'm gonna go with Whitaker. I mean, he's got the better footwork. His head wasn't in the right place when he was dealing with the personal stuff, and then up to the fight with Adesanya. He's not the same. He's not the same Whitaker we've seen before. That's off to the guy. Still went in there, did his job. Boom. Sucks. He lost. That's fine. Comes back, gets another win against Darren Till, which Darren Till is also pretty good. Great boxer, and it was a great fight between the two of them. Now moving on to the Khabib and Gaethje. As for this kind of reminds me of a grappler versus striker classic. It's kind of reminds me of Tito Ortiz versus Chuck Liddell, with Chuck Liddell as being Gaethje, those combinations, leg kicks. As for Khabib, kind of reminds me a little bit of Tito Ortiz, goes with the ground and pound, smothers him. But Khabib's got to watch out for Gaethje's leg kicks, because Gaethje's leg kicks, it ain't no easy thing to take. I mean, look what he did to Tony Ferguson. We all thought Tony Ferguson was going to beat Gaethje. He proved this all wrong. That's off the guy. Kicked his ass. Boom. Did his job.
That was a war.
No, I wouldn't say it was a war. He did. He put work on 20. And
it was also smacks too. Well, if you heard the smacks from those guys, just left and right.
That's like in the first two rounds. But after that, it was all Gaethje.
It's all Gaethje. Yeah. That's true. Yeah.
If I was gonna give Tony a round, it'd be round 2. But that's it. After all that, it's just all Gaethje until the stoppage. But if I had to choose between Gaethje and Khabib, it's a tough one to choose. But
Made me nervous, man.
I'm gonna go with the underdog.
Oh!
I know, surprise.
Oh my
Okay,
God.
okay, I understand. Yeah.
So
No, I get you. I get you.
The only reason I'm saying this is because Gaethje's got better crisp boxing than Khabib. Khabib's boxing's all right. I mean, we all seen it. He's just not. He's not. He's not the type of guy that utilizes boxing much. He
Yeah.
utilizes wrestling
I
pedigree.
think yeah.
And so as for Gaethje doesn't use wrestling. He's got a wrestling background. So I'm gonna go with Gaethje because he's gonna probably neutralize his wrestling if he can. If not, then Khabib is gonna smother him and take him to the deep waters and throw 4 or 5 rounds. So
it's got to be knockout Gaethje, right? Knockout.
I'll say yeah, TKO.
Because I don't see Khabib losing enough rounds, which is one of the reasons so the only way I think Gaethje could win, at least in my opinion, is if Gaethje can just knock him out before Khabib has enough time to win rounds. Because obviously Khabib's style somewhat boring watching. If you're an MMA fan, you really can respect it. But so yeah, what do you want to say about that?
Hold up, before Ryan goes on. Well, I will throw in another thing. If if Gaethje, kind of, preserves his stamina, which we all know he kind of goes out, rotted socking,
Yeah.
and he doesn't preserve his stamina. So I mean, that's when Khabib comes into the play and starts smothering him. So I mean, there's factors into this fight. So there's pros and cons for each fighter, and somebody has an upper advantage than the other. With Khabib, he's got like I said, a little bit of cardio if Justin Gaethje goes wild and out. So it could go either way. But like I said, I'm gonna go with the underdog, and he's gonna take it to him.
Wow. All right, RKJ, the casual fan, give your pick.
First of all, Nick, I think we need to stop the podcast and do an intervention for Jesse. Jesse, I think you're doing too much crack cocaine, brother. I think you're doing too much crack cocaine with that pick. I'm sorry. I cannot see Justin Gaethje pulling out the same performance that he had against Ferguson against Khabib. Khabib could just slow this down, get him down onto the mat, and basically be like another Kamaru. Kind of reminds me of Kamaru Usman a little bit in the fact that Kamaru Usman gets down on the mat, right? Pulls him down on the mat and kind of forces him, plays his style, that aggressive style on the mat. And it's boring to watch sometimes, but it's very effective. So I'm sorry. This is also the big time factor. Khabib's had more big money fights in his career than Justin Gaethje. And I'm just going to pick Khabib to win this one. I don't think it's going to be a first round knockout. I'm not that stupid, but I do think, however, it's going to go into the 4th and 5th round. I'll tell you what, I'll pick Khabib to win in the 5th round by submission.
Okay, that makes sense.
5th round, so you're saying he just takes it to him, eventually just, yeah. Fair.
I don't, because you remember in that Conor McGregor fight, McGregor didn't tap out until the 4th round. He made it through. I didn't think McGregor was going to make it that far, but he's able to survive. So in this situation, I could just see Khabib just slowly wearing him out. And also, I mean, it goes without saying, the pressure of the big moment, Justin Gaethje, this is his first real test. Ferguson's cool and all, but you're facing the top guy in your division, undefeated. I mean, I think that pressure is going to get to him eventually. And Khabib can just get him on the ground, play slow, and get him on the ground. As soon as you get him up against that cage, it's over.
Hey, I love that all 4 of us have a legitimate general pick on this fight, too. It's one of those rare moments where all 4 of us have paid enough attention to these fights that we all have an opinion on this. So 3 of us got Khabib. Jesse was the experts going with Gaethje, so maybe that says something, right? Maybe Jesse's got money on Gaethje. He's got a little bias in there, but
pick Cowboy Donald Cerrone in January too.
At one time.
That's true.
Yeah, but at the same time, underdogs can be underestimated too. So that's another one. And we love surprises.
But as far as Khabib goes, this is his toughest test, in my opinion. It's the toughest test. It's the hardest guy he's gonna face.
Here's the problem. The secret's out on Gaethje. He surprised Ferguson, and everybody was like, oh, shit. Guess what? Khabib has had months to study this guy during a global pandemic. He's had the opportunity to really dive into this guy's tactics, his technique. Gaethje better come out firing. He better come out with some surprises. I always think in these big type fights, you want to come out, you want to surprise your opponent with something they haven't seen. You know, it's kind of like in football. Okay, well, they know I like to run this play. Let me run a different play. I kind of like that. I would love to see Gaethje come out with something different, because if Khabib has an opportunity to just study everything Gaethje's been doing and study that Ferguson fight since what, April? Because that fight happened in April, and now we're in October. He's had the opportunity to study that fight. He's going to know everything Gaethje's going to want to go through, because I think Khabib is one of the best prepared fighters going into any type of fight that I've ever seen. You know, obviously, unfortunately, with the loss of his father, that might be affected, but still, his father probably passed on to him some traits and some ways to get ready and prepare for a opponent that, you know, Khabib will be able to take into this fight. So I just don't believe that Justin Gaethje is going to be able to surprise us this time around compared to what he did against Ferguson back in April.
He smashes people.
It's going to be an interesting fight for sure. And even more interesting is what time this fight's going to start. It's not going to be the usual 2 a.m, 3 a.m, whatever time they start. This fight here on the West Coast, the main card's going to start at 11 a.m. So this fight's going to happen around 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. That's about 4 or 5 o'clock if you're on the East Coast. Just letting you guys know that, because this will happen in the middle of the day on Saturday. Much similar to Khabib's last fight with Dustin Poirier. So if you're expecting that fight to start at 7 o'clock or 10 o'clock or whatever, it's not gonna. It's gonna start in the middle of the afternoon, and the fighters will be the best prepared they can be, which is what should make this card even better. It's gonna be one of those situations where I'm gonna have to think about calling out work. That's how good this card is. Or at least tape it, tell everybody to shut the fuck up, and go on my business. But it's been a good podcast, guys. I love these ones where we kind of just shoot the shit, MMA stuff, wrestling stuff. This would be a good one. We've been promoting this all week. Brian Ortega, Korean Zombie tonight. Khabib, Justin Gaethje main eventing next week, and of course the world of wrestling will just keep on disappointing us every single week. We'll be back with more backgrounds. This is Zumi, my kitten, my brand new kitten that I have. Ryan went with a very interesting background, his room. Jesse has what kind of looks like a
lab.
What's the show called? What's that?
Rick and Morty.
Rick and Morty feel, exactly. And Eric went Penthouse Santos on us. He went Penthouse Santos on us with the upper level New York style apartment. So
also where I read stories.
Absolutely. But yeah, this has been the Ring Generals podcast. RKJ, man, take it away.
Hey man, like, comment, and subscribe. But as always, raise a glass in the sky and salute the Ring Generals.
Oh yeah.
It's the Sauce, Alexander, and you're watching the Ring General podcast. Turn this man around. Subscribe, like, and comment.
Well, raise a glass in the sky and salute the Ring Generals.
That's right.